So, good evening, everyone. Sorry for not being in your midst because my bail conditions do not permit me to travel beyond Maharashtra and Goa. Most of people might be knowing about my background. I'm one of the big S16. So, hey, my topic is dissent, privacy, and state, something like that. And everybody knows what is dissent. Dissent is a vital component of democratic societies, enabling the questioning of power and the pursuit of social justice. However, states often suppress. States do not like dissent, to maintain control. It's not only confined to India. World over, dissent is not liked by the states. And privacy, as you know, privacy in simple terms probably is the right of people to be left alone. Privacy is sacrosanct because it underpins fundamental human rights, protects against abuses of power, ensures psychological well-being, maintains social integrity, and upholds legal and ethical standards. There is a very intimate connection with privacy. Privacy and dissent are codependent. Dissent can only exist where privacy does, and privacy is what gives dissent its protection. Privacy, on the other hand, could exist where dissent is possible. What has happened to dissent? Whenever such questions actually are invoked, we go to Constitution and find that we have all these rights enshrined in the Constitution. That we have free speech. There is a plethora of rights that have been given, but we do not understand that the Constitution actually imposes lot many restrictions too. None other than Babasaheb Ambedkar, defended these restrictions and justified them. He was uh, actually defender of something like uh, these restrictions against free kind of speech. Um, he was influenced by the American case, when the subject was discussed in the Constituent Assembly. Ambedkar involved the Git Law versus State of New York judgment, wherein the Supreme Court of US said that the rights are not absolute. The state ultimately has something like something what is called police power, and under that, rights get restricted. The free speech is not an absolute, and it gets restricted. To that, one of the vocal member of the Constituent Assembly, Professor K.T. Shah, said that all these rights, particularly speech, free speech, etc., has been given by the right hand, and it has been taken away by 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 left hands. So such were the comments. Even another Constituent Assembly member, Somnath Lahiri, also had commented upon the arbitrary definition of the security. There are a lot of such restrictions imposed on these rights, like under the sovereignty of and integrity of nation, national security, then foreign relations with the foreign countries, defamation and contempt of law, decency and morality, etc., etc. So then, effectively, what happens is the state has used these restrictions, whatever founding fathers might have meant, but the successive governments have used this to their hilt and denied people their rights, fundamental rights, so called. Privacy also is a kind of, like to restrict the dissent. The surveillance comes in because less dissent becomes something like a collective phenomena and gets coinage in society. State would be interested to curb the dissent, and for that they created the surveillance infrastructure. Surveillance infrastructure, everybody knows what the state's surveillance infrastructure is. There is a lot of something like an IB and RO and things like that. And there is a network of police informers. in the society, which actually keeps on surveilling some people who are personal non-data to state, or person the state would like to have surveillance on. The surveillance thing has really aggravated with the advent of IT, information technology, and particularly internet. When the world started getting networked, it became very, very difficult to kind of resist these surveillance attacks. Where I happen to be IT head of my company then, and almost was one of the evangelists actually for information technology. We were there are a lot many pluses. Obviously, there were many pluses with this technology, but we were even aware that what a rogue kind of politicians could do with this, or even the rogue of different kind also could misuse it for their purpose. So now you see what kind of surveillance that can be exercised by this thing. To the thing has come to the fore that almost none is safe here. Everybody is almost uh, surveilled very intimately. You are naked before the state, and state is opaque to us. The state would not reveal anything, but every individual or all public is naked before the state. You have, Aadhaar, which actually came with the garb of something like doing social justice to people, transferring funds, etc., to their account directly and in eliminating middlemen. But it is now became something like an additional burden and something like a surveilling tool on the people. All kinds of data is with the state, and there are leakages to this data, the other data. There are reports that are being sold in the market for as low as $500. So these became so sort of pervasive that it becomes worrisome now that are we do not have any privacy left. There are everybody knows the architecture. Probably the people have idea, at least you don't have to know architecture of internet and everything, but there are something like the subsea cables, data cables, OFCs we call, and they carry huge amount of data, and there are tools. There have been plethora of tools like Tempora who actually can tap into these cables and collect a huge data in chunks. And this is going on for now years. There are something like uh, uh, there are other tools which actually track even data flows, international data flows, and something like one time within a month, something like 97 billion pieces of data were stolen. India is actually doing all these kinds of things, and India ranks almost fifth in the world in data collection. It had within 20 days, those days when it was actually being monitored, it had collected 6 billion pieces of data on Indians. So in one way, the attack on dissent has been built into the constitution, right from the constitution itself. Not many are aware of. And another way, the surveillance also started getting built and got kind of accentuated with the technology. So both ways, people are squeezed. There is absolutely no dissent. The states have created the complement of draconian laws. There are plenty of them. There are hundreds of them, but the prominent one that we know of, UAPA, APSA in Northeast being used, Public Safety Acts, and various special public uh, public security acts enacted by the states. Maharashtra recently was proposing to enact a state, and the chief minister, when the the bill was presented when the assembly was coming to an end, and then the chief minister actually said, oh, the deputy chief minister said that they would bring an ordinance. Such is the hurry and such is the important being give in to this kind of architecture. So today you do know that like last 10 years we have been facing this kinds of things. But surveillance as it connotes, surveillance is not uh, meant to surveil such people who are actually suspect, or surveillance is not something like to catch their suspicious activity or conspiratorial actions. But these very tools can be used by the state to incriminate them. They can primarily kind of pre-select people to incriminate and incarcerate them. There are spywares and plethora of malwares which actually could be used to plant documents, etc., and they become an easy evidence. Whether they stand in courts of law or not, but you must be aware that the bails get repeatedly denied in the course of law. So even the Supreme Court denied the bail to a UAPA accused. This has been happening, and there have been many cases of such kind of dissent. Many well-meaning journalists, well-meaning public intellectuals, uh, lawyers, uh, and activists are in jail today. So this is the fate of dissent in India, and we are in that sense living in a very very worrisome times. Uh, I think I would end here and look for your questions. That would be better.
Thank you, Anand. Okay, I think this is a good time. Is this mic working? Okay. Yeah, I think this is a good time to open for questions. We'll keep it super brief because we're cognizant of the time. Okay, we have some. Can we start with you, please? Long press on the.
Thank you.
Please speak
No.
loudly
Audible?
So that Anand
Yeah.
sir can also hear.
My question is for Smriti. I'm also a huge fan of the work Why Loiter, and that's something we studied in college as well. And recently, last year, in fact, Karnataka government had come out with their Shakti scheme, which allowed women to travel freely in buses. And one of the consequences of that, which I think even they weren't expecting, was how women use that to loiter and even increase economic activity within the state, right? And so all of a sudden, there were reports of women just going around with their friends, visiting temples or waterfalls and sites that they would have never seen without the presence of a male family member. I just wanted to ask you, are there similar policy interventions that come to mind that have had these kind of effects on women's agency to loiter?
Thanks for that. Yeah, I think there are others, right? Delhi has a similar policy of allowing women free DTC travel on bus. In Himachal, where I come from, on Raksha Bandhan, only women are allowed to travel for free. So that's not really loitering because it's kind of purpose driven to get protected by their brothers. But but really, yeah, I think it is ideas like these of creating spaces. There are movements like Reclaim the Night, which usually happen, of course, in response to sad incidents. But again, there, I think I wanted to give this example earlier and I missed giving it. But the report which was out from the Wire a few days back about this Reclaim the Night protest around organized in Mumbai outside the Hiranandani, a posh complex. And when people from the neighboring slum, other women wanted to be a part of it, they were excluded. So it's also important to realize, while these interventions are interesting and important, there is always this hierarchy and but I'm digressing from your question. But to answer your question, yeah, I think the state has tried to make some of these interventions. Of course, one can be skeptical and say it is of course political in that sense, but it does help increase agency for women when such interventions happen.
Another question coming in from this side of the room. Can we have that gentleman? That the one in the back, Angela.
Hi, my question is to Smriti. So you have talked about claiming or reclaiming the public spaces to loiter, and people are also very willing to give up the privacy in the public space by giving consent to the governments or the police to establish, install CCTV cameras and use of facial recognition technology and other kind of technology. And they have even popular support to the police and other amendments for like public safety amendment in Hyderabad after the bomb blast and everything. But on the other hand, this law or these amendments have been misused by the same police and the same government, where you might have heard of Operation Chabutra in Hyderabad, where the south zone, South Delhi, South Hyderabad, people sitting outside their house, the Chabutra, the area where they can sit, they have been picked up, they have been detained, and some even arrested. They are mostly teenagers, right, just hanging out with their friends. So yet people are still willing, except for the people who are who are suffering, the people affected by that, which are mostly the marginalized community and the minorities. Except for that, there seems to be a very blanket consent given and blanket acceptance to this abuse of power and violation of privacy just for the sake of security in the public space. This is mostly coming from the privileged community. So how do we begin to understand this? Because it's very blatant abuse of power, and yet the majority of the community, even the educated people, seems to be fine with it.
I think that's very true. And it is only when you are at the receiving end of a technology like this, the negative receiving end, that you realize its consequences. And unfortunately, the way society is structured, most of us who believe in the security potential of these technologies are never at the receiving end of it, right? So it would happen when mission creep happens, when today people want CCTVs in schools because they think it's protecting their children, but when tomorrow their children go into protests, they go into demonstrations, and that same CCTV footage is used for facial recognition, and those kids are hauled up, not getting college admissions. I think only when those incidents happen where the privileged and the elite are affected by it will we kind of realize. Similarly with Aadhaar, right? We only rose up to it when we were asked to do KYC for bank accounts. Like nobody except very few people were talking and working on it before that, when it was about welfare and it was about benefits, when it was about KYC and we were affected. That's when the realization dawned on everyone.
Okay, for the next question, I'm going to put a caveat. Because you can discuss with Smriti and Mihir outside if time runs out. If anyone has a question for Anand, we'll take that. Okay, we couldn't get to you earlier in the early session, so now please. Can we hand a mic to him, please? Make sure he can hear you.
Hello. Hello, sir. My question is to you. A very material example that we saw of this debate between security and privacy was earlier this year when the government of India was planning to ban proton mail, which is the holy grail of privacy lovers like me. The reason, however, for the ban was that some mails were sent to some public school wherein a threat to bomb the school were sent via the mail. And the thing is, since it was sent from proton mail, there was no way to track who was the sender, and therefore the police was not able to track who was the person who caused the panic by sending the bomb threats. And there have been examples of using proton mail or other such privacy friendly tools to engage in activities such as cyber stalking, or such as maybe even some other mischievous activities that affect the public at large. So at what point do we how do we make the distinction between using privacy tools uh, as a uh, empowering tool for dissent, and how do we make a crackdown on people who are actually using it for mischievous or even illegal activities that harm the public?
There is no way to differentiate that, but as far as state is concerned, even such kind of signal or proton mails, etc., being used by people are being cited by the police, that these people are indulging into something like an nefarious activities, and they are getting something. And cause if they are, they do hardly have any kind of understanding of this information technology, etc., and they get misled uh, and prejudiced against the subject. There is no way. These are just the tools. To what use you put it to is your concern. So it should not be excessive alarm created about these kinds of things. Yes, it might be definitely used by some such criminal activities, etc. But that needs to be tolerated. There could be other ways around to catch them. That, but it's not that just because this gets something like used for keeping or safeguarding your privacy. So you incriminate them or something like ban them. It happened with, you might be knowing that BlackBerry Messenger. So that time also, uh, the Indian government actually raised the issue that the BlackBerry refused. But it was not possible for BlackBerry really to uh, give the metadata also about the users. So that was the thing. And anyway, BlackBerry is past now. So I don't think if you are asking me something like how to distinguish, etc., there could be ways of distinguishing these things. So what use people are putting these tools to?
Thank you for the question and the answer both. I'm really sorry. I'm looking at the clock and it's looking scary to me personally. I will encourage you to propose your questions to Mihir and Smriti outside when you're saying your goodbyes. And I'm not going to say goodbye myself. I'm going to call upon my art executive director at IFF, Mr. Pratik Wagri, to say that for me.
Thank you. And I'm not going to take a lot of time because, well, we're over time and I don't know whether this qualifies as loitering or not, but I think the venue may not be very happy with us. I want to start with a small disclosure, right? A small number. I think people who follow IFF know we try to do this. We try to be transparent. In fact, the term we use is radically transparent wherever we can. So, and this is coupled with the thanks to everyone here. So across different heads, like the venue, the art, transportation for people. Today on this event, IFF has spent my math is not 100% exact, but somewhere in the range of 1,50,000 to 1,55,000. And I want to thank all of you for that. I want to thank our community because the reason we're able to do stuff like this is because you support us, literally support us. So first, please give yourselves a big round of applause for supporting us and for actually staying here. I also want to thank all of our speakers. Justice Mullidhar, who of course is has had to go for another engagement. Ambar, Shifali, Nikhil, Mihir, Priti, and Anand sir, thank you very much for your fascinating and really incredible insight today. I had actually planned to end today with a slight provocation to give all of us something to think about. But I think you all have given us so much to think about already that I'm not even going to try that. And lastly and finally, I just want to thank the IFF team who've been working very hard to put this event together over the last few weeks while wrestling with the broadcasting bill, wrestling with court cases. So please give them a round of applause as well, because I've been sitting and just watching them do all the work. I get to take some of the credit. Thank you very much. But please, thanks to all of you as well. And again, thank you again for coming. And we hope to see you again at Privacy Supreme next year.